Good evening and welcome to Knox Makers. It's Tuesday, and for us that means show and share. We've gathered to show off projects that we've been working on. Successful projects, failed projects, projects that have stalled out. Whatever you've got going on, we're excited to see them. And we've got a list of folks who have generously brought their projects to show us. And we're going to start off tonight with Thea, who has brought crocheted accessories.
My assistant today. This started with something I saw on Pinterest, as most of my hobbies do. And I wanted to be able to, especially in the summer when my mom and I go walking around Chattanooga on the riverfront, and then we stop at a restaurant, you want to class up more than just a t-shirt sometimes. So this was the first one I made. And it fits very nicely over a t-shirt. But then I bought this little black dress at a secondhand store, and it's got a lower seam line for the collar. So when you put this on, it chokes it up, and it just didn't look quite right to me. And I was making something to class this up for Christmas, because we always go to a fancy Christmas service at church. So I made this one out of Christmas colors, and I thought that's going to look great. And it fits the dress correctly. But it ended up being a little too dark. There wasn't contrast there. It certainly doesn't look Christmassy. So the most recent one I made, I picked the purpley pinkish color because it matches the tights that I usually wear that are insulated. And I specifically crocheted the base so it would fit with the dress. And then it's got the silver so you get the contrast. So I'm quite happy with how this one turned out. But the whole project probably took me about 2 years because I kept fiddling with it. I'm going to pass the collars around, and the one thing I'd like you guys to notice is this is a size 3 crochet or a size 30 crochet thread. This one is what you commonly find in the store as a size 10 or a bedspread weight, and you can really tell the difference between the collars. This one is also the size 10, but it's not quite as obvious.
Does one size thread take longer than the other?
It's very similar to electrical wiring, where the larger the number, the smaller the thread. So yes, it will take longer to work the same size.
What size of crochet hook did you use?
The purple one, because I was kind of mixing pattern and thread, I ended up working with a 9 most of the time instead of your 6. So I did size it down, and that's why it's a little denser. Any other questions? Thank you.
Very lovely work, thank you. And thank you to your lovely assistant as well. Next up, we've got Evan, who has brought a steel bike frame to show us.
So I made another bicycle here. It's a little bit, I guess I'll just put it there. Yeah, made another bike. This was a little bit different from the last one I made, so this is my third frame. Last time I made a mountain bike, so I tried to just make something that's kind of the opposite. So this has a very long rear end and a pretty upright position. I'm still trying to figure out geometry and stuff, so I figured I'd make it on the other end of the spectrum, and now I can, ride them and see how they both feel. I bought all the parts for this, and I have these interesting poly dropouts, and So these actually have swappable inserts, so you can change from like a through axle to a quick release. And then I found a really good deal on a belt drive drivetrain on Facebook Marketplace. And the nice thing about these poly drops is they actually split. So when you take the insert out, the seat stay and the chain stay aren't attached anymore, and so you can fit a belt through. So if you ever have a belt drive bike, you need a cut in the frame to actually put the belt through. Usually though, if you're making a belt drive, you'd use like a bigger adjustment. But anyways, if you size it real, correctly, then you can, buy a belt that will actually tension properly. So I did all my math, and then I made it way too long, and so I had to buy a different belt, and still didn't work. It's like about 1 millimeter too long for the longer belt, so I'm gonna swap it over to a chain drive. But yeah, it's kind of intended to be like an all-terrain bike. It has lots of rack mounts, which I didn't do last time. The last bike I made, I had to hand file all the joints to miter them, but this time I got to use the mill, which was much, much nicer. So there's kind of that's in Fusion, I modeled it. You can see here on the mill, I've got this nice miter block, and then I've got an arbor that I can put my hole saws on, and I just go really slow, and I use the wheel to kind of feed it really, really slow and take your time, since it's really thin tubing. And but luckily on such a heavy machine like that, you get a really nice miter that after a minute or two with a hand file, it's pretty much ready to weld. There's another one. And then to kind of phase them, so I have a separate block that I mount to the tubes. And so, you have multiple miters on a tube, and so I use this block to either phase them in plane or at a 90-degree angle for some of the cuts. Like this one needs to be 90 to that. And then I leave those blocks on there for, when I'm drilling the holes for the water bottle mounts and things like that. So it kind of helps keep everything somewhat aligned. Keep going the wrong way here. But that was kind of actually, I knocked out all those cuts in maybe 2 hours and had it all almost ready to throw in the fixture. Did the stays on the mill as well, which was a little bit trickier because they have multiple bends and they go from like an oval to a round, so it's kind of tricky to hold them. But here I am cutting the head tube down, so I hacksawed it to a rough length, and then I turned it on the lathe to get it to the right length, because this metal is a little bit too thin and too hard to use on the bandsaws in there. So made it work on the lathe, and actually it's a lot more precise and a lot nicer finish there anyway. So this is in the fixture I made, so it's like a rip off of a fixture you can buy, but just extrusion stuff. You can get it all set up. I have it in CAD as well, so I figure out where everything needs to go and I lock it down. My cuts were close. I had to readjust the fixture a couple times, but once it's all good, then I go and drill all the vent holes. So you can see a couple vent holes there. I also drill all the water bottle holes. This is after I welded on these cable tie mounts. And that's the seat tube, just more welding. And then this is a part I was trying to get to the rear end is a real pain to weld, because there's just lots of like little tight spots that you can't really it's hard to fit the cup in for TIG welding. But luckily I found this piece in the scrap bin that allowed me to kind of clamp it to the table. So I don't know, anyone who made this little piece of scrap, thank you. It worked out perfectly. It was exactly what I needed, and it made it much, much nicer to kind of hold it upright. This is me so these I kind of bend on a hand bender, and then I just hand file them to miter them, but you can see some nice rubber band fixturing there to hold them on while I tacked them. And then this was actually the first frame I tried brazing on. So I brought some, the last bike I made, I barely put water bottle mounts on, but I really wanted to do a lot of mounts on this one so I can add lots of bags and racks. And just make it, a good adventure bicycle. But I have a real tough time with water bottle bosses because they're very tiny and they're very tricky to weld because they're basically a chunk of metal into a really thin tube. So you have like a material difference, and then it's a really tight radius, and so getting them to look nice is tough. And so I did a lot of practice. Didn't like how they looked, so figured I would try a riv nut. Didn't really like how that looked either, and I had heard worries of them spinning, so tried brazing. I got some, I think 56% silver and some stay-silver flux and a little map torch. Maybe not the best way to do it, but it worked pretty well. But this is in my garage. I fluxed it all up and brazed it, and then I carried a bunch of water out from my kitchen and bathed it in this thing, get all the flux off. And then I spent a lot of time polishing it up with some Scotch-Brite. But yeah, pretty happy with, the mitering on the mill made it much easier to weld. So they're not, the previous welds, but they're much better than they were last time. This one. That kind of doesn't really fit. But anyways, maybe you can see some of the brazes here. But the brazing looked much nicer, less of a kind of burnout on them. And once it's under paint, you won't be able to tell. But yeah, I have 4 water bottle mounts. Most of these will be for bags and things. And then a nice cable port so I can route a dropper post if I want. But yeah, that's the bike. And then I'll pass around these practice pieces if you guys want to look at all the rough attempts. They're very rough. They're also a little rusty because I threw them in a bucket of water to clean all the flux off. So didn't, this one I took care to towel it off, and then I heated it up with a heat gun to try and get all the water out from inside. So I was really worried. I was like, oh, I just put this in a bath of water, and now it's like sitting in my garage. It's just going to rust, and it actually rusts pretty fast. But yeah, I just spent like probably an hour just heating it up with a heat gun and watching all the steam come out, and then sprayed a bunch of oil in there. So hopefully it doesn't rust out from the inside, but we'll see. I think if this does break, it'll probably break back here. So I used the wrong filler metal when I welded this. These are stainless, and I bought these like 3 years ago, and I forgot. Didn't really re-look at what metal they were, so I used ER70S-2 to join steel to stainless, which you're not supposed to do, I guess. And so now I got like 3 metals kind of mixing around in there, so we will see how the longevity of it. But anyways, luckily there's 4 of them, so if one crack, it'll be all right. Yes.
Since this is your third, are you getting quicker at building frames?
Definitely. This one, I think the last one I spent probably like 4 or 5 months on. This one I started maybe a month or 2 ago, probably 2 months ago. But yeah, I basically made the bulk of the frame in about a week and a half. Mostly just finding the time to go and spend, a couple hours TIG welding. But yeah, and especially cutting it on the mill. Like I said, the last one I used paper templates and hand files and a hacksaw to miter all these joints, and that takes a really long time. So being able to, spend a little bit of time setting it up on the mill and then just having a clean, precise cut to begin with is like so much better. And it really helped with the welding as well.
Did you do any structural analysis in Fusion to get an idea of where it would break?
No, luckily bikes are pretty well figured out, I think. So as long as you don't do anything too crazy. I've heard some frame builders say that even seat stays are unnecessary. They're like, you can get pretty creative, and there's a large window of steel, especially steel bikes usually break in fatigue anyways, so it's not going to be like a shatter. It's not a carbon bike. It's not going to shatter underneath you. It'll either rust out and start to crack, or it'll start to bend before it really breaks. So it's a pretty safe material, very forgiving, even if your welds are not perfect like mine. So
How much does it weigh?
I don't really know. I'm not. This one was not. It's not a race bike, so I haven't been too concerned with the weight. But they're pretty thin tubes. These are. Yeah, I don't know. I'd wager. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bad judge of how much it weighs. There's also a huge dummy axle on it. That's a big chunk of metal, so it's heavier than it would be otherwise. But they're pretty thin. Most of the tubes go from about 0.9 millimeters to like 0.6 in the middle. So they're triple butted, so they get thinner, and that just kind of makes them ride nicer. And then these are about 0.7 millimeters thick. So very easy to burn through when you're welding, but you know, as long as I usually weld like 55 amps, and I use like a 3/32 tungsten just because I think the 3/32 is a little bit more stable than like a smaller 16th or something. But anyways, yeah, thank you all. Oh,
Oh, sorry. When you're done with the bike, how do you plan on using it? Like mountain biking, street biking? Are you commuting on it?
this will be kind of a adventure bike, so mostly a commuter around town, but like I said, I added a lot of mounts for bags so I can do like bike packing and things like that. I got to figure out what I'm going to do for a fork. I haven't made one yet, so I might try and make one for this, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm gonna paint it and stuff, and you know, do all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, thanks y'all.
That is such impressive work. Thank you for sharing that. As a matter of trivia, if you have one of those carbon fiber bicycles attached to the roof of your vehicle and you forget that when you drive into the carport, it will either make a hole in your house or bend your car or both. I don't want to talk about why I know this. Next up, we've got Devin, who has brought iris painting, an iris painting.
You know what? I kind of want to make iris pudding now. That sounds really great. Hi, I'm Devin. Nice to meet y'all again, or for the 20th time. So I brought a commission that is almost done, has a couple hours left. For some context, the only thing I got for this commission was, I like this flower. That's it. This photo of this flower. And I was like, this is the worst thing that you could do to me. Give me something. Give me something. So it took me a really long time to figure out what I was going to do. So I finally ended up, that's really not very great, but oh well. So what I ended up doing was I took a lot of inspiration from botanicals from like 17th, 18th century, and tried to make it a little bit realistic, but you got to throw some gold on it. So you can kind of see the gold in there a little bit. This was made with gouache, so it's a little similar to watercolor, not quite the same at all, actually. But it's not really as, you don't have to have those huge drying phases like you do with oil paint. Like I said, I have a couple more hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours left on this. I have to tighten up all the lines, but by then it'll be gone and I won't be back here with this. It'll be off to a new home, and I will never have to look at it again. Yay! And maybe I'll get some money back. We'll see. That's it. Short and sweet.
Tell us about the paint.
So gouache, do you want to know like the chemistry behind it or that?
I don't know anything.
How is it so shiny?
So it's gouache is a very similar to watercolor in that it is a binder and the pigment, usually a water-soluble binder. I make paint in my free time, so I will literally go on and on about this. But the biggest difference between watercolor and gouache is that gouache is a lot more pigment. So like you have like 3/4 of it is pigment, whereas with watercolor, like maybe 1/4 of it is pigment. So it's a lot more, it's a lot less watery. You can still reconstitute it with water sometimes, as long as it doesn't dry out too much. But it's pretty, if you were starting to make paint, it's probably the most forgiving paint to make. And it doesn't require fancy watercolor paper, which is expensive. Yes? Sorry? I did not. I have made gold paint. I did not make this gold paint. This is actually Sumi gold because it's like it's like my favorite gold and actually really cheap. But I've made gold paint with real gold before. You can take like flakes of gold and add your binder to it and make a gold out of it. It's a lot of work and only worth it because gold is so expensive is why. But yes, yeah. Ta-da! Thanks.
Do y'all remember Devin asking if her stuff counted as a share? That's marvelous. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Greenho, who has brought a stool.
Hey guys. Hi. This isn't the only stool, it's just a sample. Same joke every time. Apologize for nothing. So, I've been redoing my house for a while now. It's the same one that you guys have seen snippets of before. Let's see if we can, yeah, whatever, it's close enough. This is my kitchen, and I took another picture of it from the top. And the important thing to know about this is, so this is my island in the center. There's the countertop on the side, and then there's a wall back here. In order to make a little bit extra room for my range and fridge and stuff, I actually shifted the island like towards that wall a little bit. And if you follow like the rules for how far apart things should be, I have encroached on my wall too far. So it doesn't leave a ton of room for the bar stools, but we cook a lot, so I'm like, I'd rather have more room for the cooking side. So at any rate, it necessitated making my own stools, or at least that's what I told my wife. So it's been pretty busy lately, so I knocked out 3 of these in the course of like a single day. It's just trash wood. It's what's left over from when I built my doors. I had 3-foot offcuts of poplar, so the legs are poplar. The top is a countertop material. It's actually beech. And I did all of this with pattern routing. So I made one pattern. I cut everything just a hair oversized. Here's my pattern. You can see it there. And this pattern actually just gets straight screwed to each piece. And you can see here they are rough cut. And once you can see how that's got the screw marks on it. Looks terrible. I'm sorry. Yeah, probably. I feel like it's always. Take my word for it. It's just a piece of plywood. I cut it oversized. I cut all the stock oversized so I can, screw holes into it, and I don't have to worry about clamping or anything special like that. I have a special pattern cutting router bit. It's a spiral compression bit, so instead of it blowing chips top and bottom, it pushes them to the center, so you don't get any chip out or anything like that. So here's a bunch of them all cut oversized. I cut all the joinery and stuff doing the same method also. If I could do it again, I'd actually done the full glue up of the legs first and then had a single pattern to cut them out afterwards, but I did it before just because I was trying to save pattern making material. So then I brought them back to the house, and the big question was, what was the correct height to put the seat at? There's some like rules of thumb to it, but until you like sit there and like see where your legs are hitting, it's not like super obvious. So I ended up taking, I think like 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, something like that off all of them. And then here I am putting finish on them, like on the bar top in the house. I quite often preach on using hard wax finish. This is a hard wax finish, and it's usually extremely forgiving. This particular stuff has a white pigment in it, which I've been using in the house on all of our maple because maple turns yellow with oxidation, and I was trying to keep it more what it looks like when you first mill it. And the white pigment is supposed to, go a long ways to keeping it that way, which it does, but it is so terrible to work with. It shows just like every blemish in your wood, every defect. If you get it on a little too heavy in one spot and don't get it like like polished out, buffed out, absolutely as perfect as everything else. It just screams at you that it's there. The day I brought these home, it was spitting rain ever so slightly, and I had them in the back of the truck. They weren't outside but 10 minutes probably. And even after a couple days of them drying out and, you know, doing the surface prep, everything like that at the house, they still actually templated the raindrops through that finish. So all of these have like forever a speckled rain pattern on them, which is, you know, it's a vibe, whatever. But yeah. Anyway, here they are. They're done. Oh, you can see when I took the picture too. Yeah. And if you want to sit in one, there it is. It doesn't have much of a back, but they're quite comfortable.
Very cool. Thank you, sir. And finally, this evening, we've got Joe, who has brought a Christmas star to show.
Hello, everybody. So, I know it's a little bit late, but before I get it painted and put up on the wall forever, I thought I'd bring it in. It's a Christmas present that I made for Leaky. It's like this. There you go. Now hold it real high above your head and just stand like that. But every year I give her a traditional present. I get her the annual Swarovski Christmas ornament. So we have, over the years, collected quite a few of these shiny crystal bits. She used to have them on these like little shepherd crook stands, but she's been doubling up lately. She keeps them out all year. And so this year I was like, well, I'll make something special for her to hold all of her ornaments on. I think that she has 18 of them now, and I've got 30 potential little curly cues here, so we've got some room to grow. But and we can bend them around or whatever, but you know, like they'll hang on wherever they'll be, you know, be able to hang on and be part of the larger star. When I was making it, you can see that there's some smaller stars that ended up being kind of structural members. Stars 36 degrees and you're good. They're easy to make. Same length, the little snips, and 36 degrees. So there was my little template. And you can see I was kind of welding them up in beginnings of triangles and then moving on to making them into stars. I made a few of those, and then the bigger star, that's the main star that's all the trails are coming off of. Made up a little jig and kind of twisted and made my bends around different lengths. Sometimes I was using pliers, sometimes I was using pipes, bigger pipes for bigger bends. And then I know it's kind of hard to see because the welding table and the contrast, but those are mostly all of them out there together. Started welding them up, examples of all the bends, and that's how big it was supposed to fit on the wall. It's going to kind of like arc over a doorway a little bit, like the doorway will be here, and it'll kind of go down and spill over our wall. So that's kind of yeah, that's about it. So that's Leaky's Christmas present. Yeah, Larry.
Looks pretty good like it is. You said you were painting it. What color are you painting it? And
Myself, I always enjoy leaving it looking like it was metal and welded. I like seeing the heat rainbows off of it and everything. But it's supposed to be this polished, like Swarovski ornament shininess, right? And maybe not the gritty industrial look. So I think that we're gonna go with a deeper brass is what she's looking for, so that all of the crystals will pop and give it a little bit of contrast, but still be shiny. But yeah, all right, thanks.
And now Aliki has a place for all of her traditional Swarovski car keys. We have exhausted our list of shares this evening. Did anybody else bring something to share that did not make it to the list?
realized I've been at the makerspace for a long time. So, I was actually notified by ye old Facebook that I had done a 3D scan of my dad 10 years ago, and if I can get that underneath there, with an Xbox Kinect. So there's not much detail there, but yet I know that's my dad, and it was, at the time, that was the way technology was. So, over the holiday break, I went ahead and rescanned my dad because I had the opportunity to. So it should be. And I rescanned him, and go ahead. So there's the non-textured, textured, and then the actual 3D model. So, let's see. Go ahead and zoom out just a hair. So I went ahead and printed him just as a test. So I've actually got a model of him in clear. And because it's really hard to see the transparent, even though he's got his phone still in his pocket and everything. The original one I had some solid spots, and I didn't like it, so I took a rattle can and I went ahead and painted over it so you could actually see the detail and all like that, even though it's a little. So you can still see the detail and everything, pockets. There's a lot of shininess on the camera. And then all the bends and everything in his, down to his shoes and everything. So the detail is a lot better in the last 10 years. So I was impressed looking at the Facebook photo and then looking at the new scan, and I was like, technology is coming along in 10 years, and especially when the initial thing was started at Knox Makers to begin with. So that's my 10-year trial of the scanning thing, so my geekiness.
Was the scanner
Sorry, who?
the 3D scanner that you used?
The new scanner, it's a commercial scanner, so the original one was an Xbox Kinect 360. The new one is actually $800, which is now $1,000 because it's no longer a Kickstarter, but it's a decent scanner. So I've got several different 3D scanners, one for mid-range, one for about that range, and then one that does people. And the newest one that I actually got over Christmas break is a metrology scanner, so it actually uses the laser lines and all like that. And I have actually, I think I have that on here as well. I've got it on here. The smallest thing I've scanned with my new scanner is actually a penny.
Does the scanner have its own rendering software, or do you use something else for that?
So, it does. The scanner does have its own software, and it's proprietary. So, of course, naturally, everything here we want to do open source. So, I mean, I would help someone scan an object if they wanted to go ahead and scan it, but I can't just leave it here for everyone to use because we try to do things open source and everything.
Do you know of any kind of entry level, couple $100 scanners, 3D scanners?
It depends if you want to do small, medium, or large.
Medium doesn't need that much resolution in terms of detail. Like for, trying to give you a scale. Well, really what I wanted to scan in was the A-pillar trim on my car.
Yeah, I can talk to you after the show and share and stuff like that. It's not a problem. Yes.
Did you ever put your dad on that rotating platform?
He was on a turntable, so there's actually a turntable that holds up about 410 pounds. So it actually rotates them around, and then I just move it from the top of the head all the way down to the bottom of the feet. So it's about 2.5 minutes, and then I've got a full-size person. Yes, sir.
I just said the painted one kind of looks like it should be a statue of a dictator.
Well, the thing about it is, I do want to actually print it a little bit bigger, and then because now we have this wonderful blacksmith shop. Back when, about 6 years ago, I wanted to go ahead and do it in aluminum, but now that we actually have the foundry working and all like that, my next attempt of my dad's model is to go ahead and do it, cast it in aluminum. So he's worked the last 50 years in aluminum, so he's 75 this year, and I was like, that's a pretty good roundabout to go ahead and actually get something done of him. But if nothing else, I've got a keepsake for all of us kids and things like that of him, and his grandchildren can still see it and all like that. So it's basically like a 3D tintype. That's it.
Thank you, Toby. Anyone else before we move along? No? Okay. Isn't it lovely, the variety in the shares this evening? I think that's so marvelous. And I just want to remind you that everybody is welcome to bring shares. You don't have to be a member. I mean, we're happy to see anybody's work of any sort. It's really exciting and fun. And dig those groovy progress photos. I wish I could remember to take more of those. Y'all should do that too, because I want to see them. Next up, we have a public service announcement from Billy.
Okay, folks, I just want to remind everybody, please put back any tooling that you all take out and use. I've been finding lots of tooling misplaced, missing, broken, in various different zones. Some of these tools, a drill bit costs $15 to replace because it's big, and if somebody put something in there that wasn't supposed to be, I can't find it, don't know where it's at. Batteries have been missing, gone missing. It's really frustrating. You come in the shop to use something and you can't find it because somebody's misplaced it or it's not there. So just as a reminder, put the stuff back when you're done. We're all supposed to clean up and put our tooling back before we leave for the day. If you find something missing, if you break something, let the czars know so we know, so we can get it replaced or repaired. That's it. Just thanks, Dad. Yep. Take care of your stuff, man.
Okay. We've got a few classes coming up that I want to make sure you're aware of. On Wednesday, which is January the 15th, we have a Woodworking 102 class, Wood Turning Basics, that is sold out. So I hope you already have your tickets in hand. Very much turning happening these days. On Saturday, January the 18th, Stitch and Bitch, our vibrant arts community. Join them and complain. And then Sunday, January the 19th, is our virtual board meeting. As always, we'll be posting a link to that in the All Members channel. So if you'd like to watch us make sausage, then you can do that on Sunday. Most importantly, though, I want to remind you that next Tuesday, which is the 21st, is the Knox Makers annual member meeting. It is the one night of the year where we are not open to the general public. We will be cooking on the grill and eating hot dogs and hamburgers and such like. We'll be engaging in democracy and sharing love and conviviality with one another is something that I look forward to, and I hope you do too. I hope to see you all there on Tuesday. You will have been emailed a link. You have been emailed an email which includes several links, including a survey, which is something we've not done in a long time. If you've not responded to your member survey, please do that. There's only 4 questions. They're multiple choice. It takes only a moment, but we would really like to hear your perspective. And I think that's all. We have an amazing number of new people here with us tonight. Thank you for coming out to visit. If you haven't already, please be sure you get a tour. Get any questions that you might have answered. We got lots of folks here who will be happy to engage with you and show you around and tell you about anything you want to know about. Let's go out in the workshop and make some weird stuff.